Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library. And today we're going to look at Google Docs, and we are going to select text. Now, you may already know how to select text, or at least have a couple of ways that you do it regularly. But we're going to look at common ways to select a character, a word, maybe even a paragraph or a whole document. But along the way, hopefully we will be able to share some tips and tricks on how to select text. So let's look at our first example. One common way to select text is to use your mouse pointer. And if you look at my mouse pointer in the top margin, I'm kind of moving it a little bit here so you can see it. It looks like a capital I, and some people will call that an I-beam. Now, when you have that capital I, you can click and drag. I'm just going to start at the very first line here and click and drag. And if I go slowly, I can pretty much select each character individually, or if I go faster, I can certainly select text fairly easily and fairly quickly. But using the I-beam lets me select text, and I know that because I have a light blue background that shows me what I have selected. Now I could also click on the right-hand side of what I want to select and click and drag over to the left if that is what I need to do. So either way works just fine. Coming down to this second paragraph, which is a little larger, I might even decide to select an entire paragraph, and I could do that by clicking and holding my mouse button down and then dragging down in kind of a diagonal direction so that I can select the entire paragraph, which now also has that light blue background. So that's probably a way that you already feel comfortable with. But sometimes when you click and drag using the I-beam, your mouse just kind of gets away from you and you scroll too far in a document. So if you need more control, you may decide to use keyboard keys instead. So let me come back up to the very first part of this document and use the Shift key in combination with the arrow keys that are also on the keyboard. So if I hold down the Shift key and then press the right arrow key for each character, notice that it is again selecting just one character at a time. If I hold it down, it'll go a lot faster and select more. I could also, because this happens from time to time, you type a word and you say, oh darn, I need to select that. Well, I'm at the far right of it. Well, you could click and hold down the Shift key and then press the left arrow key instead. Now what's interesting is, let's say that I select Independence here, and I use my Shift and my right arrow key, and then for whatever reason, maybe I only want to select the INDEP and not select the rest of that word. I can reverse what I've done with the right arrow key by using the left arrow key. And so while the Shift right, Shift left arrow keys work independently, they can also reverse what the other one has done, depending on what you need to do. Well, we could also come down to this second paragraph, click at the beginning of it, use the Shift key, and hold down the arrow key. And notice that as I press the arrow key, it selects a line at a time. And that makes selecting text very easy. Now, it could be that I'm at the bottom of a paragraph and I say, oh darn, I want to select this whole thing, maybe make it italicized or something. I could hold down the Shift key and use the up arrow key instead. Now, like the right and the left arrow keys, the up and the down arrow keys are the reverse of each other. So if I start here in the first paragraph, hold down my Shift and use my down arrow key, and then I say, ooh, I only meant to select the first line, I could use Shift and the up arrow key to select only the first line and deselect the second line. A couple of other things that you might find helpful. One is you may decide that you only want to select one word. To do that, you can double click on that word. So I've placed my I-beam right on top of this word library, double click, and it selects just that one word. Now I might also decide that I want to select a paragraph, and this is a little tricky, but what you can do is triple click and it will select an entire paragraph. Now let's look at some keyboard shortcuts that you may not be as familiar with. For example, if I hold down the Control key and then I press the right arrow key, watch what happens. Now my insertion point is here at the beginning of this second paragraph, and as I press the right arrow, notice that the insertion point moves to the beginning of the next word. So again, Control, right arrow, takes me to the next word, and the next word, and the next word. If I use Control left arrow, it should do just the opposite. So I have my Control key down, I press the left arrow, and it goes to the beginning of the previous word. Use Control left arrow again, and again it goes to the previous word, and to the previous word, and to the previous word. Well, the Shift key, when used in combination with other keyboard keys, can select everything from where you start to where you end. So if I hold down the Control and the Shift key, and then I press the right arrow key, my insertion point goes to the beginning of that second word, and I have selected the first word plus the space between the two words. Let's look at that again. So if I click just before a word and I hold down Control, Shift, and press the right arrow, it selects that word and even the space after it so that it ends just before the next word. Well, that can be a nice help. Let's come down to the word library here in the third line, and let's see if it works also with the left arrow. So let's see if I use Control and left arrow, it takes me backwards. But if I use Control, Shift, and the left arrow, it takes me from where my insertion point was to the beginning of the previous word. Let's try that again. Let's go to museum here. Control, Shift, left arrow, and it takes me to the beginning of the word where I clicked. Oh, well, that could be helpful from time to time, couldn't it? So let's see. Let's click at the beginning of a word, Control, Shift, left arrow, and it selects the previous word. So again, let's say that you forgot to bold or underline the previous word. This could be a really great help. Let's also look then at Control and down arrow. I've clicked just at the beginning of that second paragraph, so Control down arrow takes me to the beginning of the next paragraph. And keeping the Control key down, I can press the down arrow one more time and it takes me to the next paragraph. Well, then the up arrow should work just the opposite of that. So if I have Control, keep it down where I press the up arrow, it takes me to the beginning of the paragraph above, and press it again, and it takes me to the beginning of that second paragraph. Well, what happens then if I use Control and Shift and down arrow? So let's look at that. Control, Shift, down arrow takes me through and selects an entire paragraph, even the blank line after that. Ooh, let's try it again. Let's click at the beginning of this next paragraph, Control, Shift, hold those down while I press down arrow, and sure enough, it selects an entire paragraph, plus really it looks like a blank line there. Well, then the up arrow should work the same way. So if I'm at the end of a paragraph and I use Control, Shift, up arrow, it again selects that paragraph. Now, what if I'm in the middle of a paragraph and I'm down here at the bottom of the page and I use Control, Shift, up arrow? Oh, well, it just starts where my mouse pointer was and then selects that paragraph. Let's try that again. So if I click in the middle of a paragraph, Control, Shift, up arrow selects from where my mouse pointer was and up, and selects the top part of that paragraph, not the entire thing. So it kind of depends on where you are and where you click as to how much you select, but Control, Shift, down and up arrow also work to be great tools for you when you need to select text. Besides using Control and Shift and the arrow keys, you can also use Control and Shift if you'd like to, plus Home and End keys that are also on your keyboard. Home and End keys are usually fairly close together depending on how your keyboard is laid out. On mine, I find them above the numeric keypad just side by side. Well, let's see what Control and End do first. So let me click at the beginning of our document, hold down the Control key, and then press End. And what it does is it takes me to the very end of my document. And in this case, I may have pressed Enter after typing the last sentence here in my document. And so it's finding that I actually have some extra space down below where I have typed. Well, then let's see what Control and Home do. So let me hold down Control and press Home, and it takes me to the beginning. Well, you can see how that would be really a great tool, especially when you have a really large document. Let's say that you're on page 15 of a document and you're clicked in the middle of your text, and all of a sudden you say, oh darn, I need to go back to the beginning. Well, Control Home could get you there very quickly and easily without a lot of scrolling to get there. Now, it could be by the same token that you need to very quickly get to the end of your document, and Control End will certainly help you find that as well. But just as we found with the Control and Shift with the arrows, it works the same way with Control and Home. So let me go back up to Control Home. This time I'm going to do Control Shift and press End to get to the end of the document, but because I'm holding down the Shift key, we can predict that I'm also going to select everything from where my cursor is now, my mouse cursor, which is at the beginning, clear down to the end. So Control Shift End selects everything in this document. Now, if I were clicked, say in the middle of my document, and did this Control Shift End, it would take from where I've clicked to the end, and all of that text would be selected. Well, then let's try the other way as well. Let's do Control, Shift, and Home, and it takes me up to the beginning, and it selects all of the text in between where I originally clicked to the beginning. Well, let me click also in the middle of my document just so we can see what happens there. And that's Control, Shift, and Home, and it starts where I have clicked and selects all of the text above where my mouse pointer was, clear to the beginning of that document. So some really helpful tools here with Control Shift End and Control Shift Home. Now there is one other way that people use to select all of the text in a document, and this may even be the most popular, so you may already be familiar with it, and that is simply Control A for Control All or Select All. So Control A selects all of the text in the document, and it's just up to you what you prefer and where you are clicked in your document to make that decision. To learn even more, be sure to go to mymcpl.org/online learning, where you will find our great online resources, which include Universal Class, lynda.com, and Learning Express Library. Be sure to join us each week as we present a variety of tech topics. Each week we premiere 3 new videos. You'll be able to find them at 1 o'clock on Wednesday and Friday, or at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. You can find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, or if you prefer, be sure to subscribe to our MCPL MO channel on YouTube, where you'll be able to find our MCPL Consumer Technology Resources playlist.